Last time I was here, we started a sermon series on stewardship. And we talked about how in that series, when we talk about stewardship, we normally are talking about what? Money, a lot of times, right? But we actually started talking about how the most important thing that we are stewards of is the gospel. That's what matters more than anything else, right? What we do with our money doesn't really matter unless we are doing it for the gospel, ultimately, right? That's the bigger question. Today we are going to look at time, what we do with our time, being stewards of the present, stewards of now. Before we begin, I want to pray. Let's pray together. Lord God, would you please steward this time? Use it for your purposes. May our hearts, may our minds be present and attentive to you and to what you would say to us here and now. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. So when I preach, the hardest thing for me typically is deciding on what to preach. When I am thinking about it, it feels like there's an entire ocean of things that can be said about God and what that means for us and how that matters to us. And I've got to decide which little teaspoon of the ocean to dip out and to serve up on one Sabbath morning. How do you pick which teaspoon of the ocean is the best? And so a lot of times I'm like, was that the right thing? Is that what people need to hear? But there have been a few moments in my life where I knew that God ordained that exact teaspoon to be the one that he wanted people to hear. One of those was a couple years ago. There was a group of Eritreans. Eritrea is a country in Africa, northeastern part of Africa. There's a number of refugees in Harrisonburg from that country. There's a war between Eritrea and Ethiopia that has been stretched on for years. And there was a group that I was trying to support. And they had a gathering in a home in Maryland one Sabbath and invited me to come and to preach to their gathering. So I drove up there. It was up around the Beltway, and there was a little more traffic than I expected on a Saturday morning, and so I only got there like 10 minutes before the service was going to start, and I was kind of feeling a little awkward about that because it felt like I was kind of getting there last minute, and I pulled up to the house, and I was like, well, there should be more cars here. Nobody's here. And knocked on the door. And sure enough, I was the first one. Different cultures have different ways of looking at time. And I started talking to the gentleman whose house it was. I believe his name was Haptamariam. And he was telling me how he had just that week retired. That he had worked for the transportation there in that city for decades, and he had done this all of these years, and he had just retired, maybe the day before, I think. And so I was, just asking him, "What do you want to do in your retirement? What are your plans?" And he was telling me about some of the things that he wanted to do. And then people started gathering, and we had a worship service. And I had chosen to preach that day on Psalm 90. And I had no idea how relevant Psalm 90 was going to be. So let's turn there. And as we dive into it, I'll tell you a little bit about why this message was so timely. Psalm 90. Psalm 90, this is page 569 if you're using one of the Bibles under your seats. Psalm 90 is a rarity among Psalms because it was actually authored by Moses. We don't have a lot of those. And we're told it's a prayer of Moses. This is a prayer that Moses wrote. We don't know when. Is he there at Sinai? Is he in the wilderness? We don't know at what point in Moses' life he wrote this psalm. Verse 1, Lord, you have been our dwelling place in all generations. Now that's kind of interesting, coming from somebody who lived for decades as a nomad in the desert, right? Lord, you have been our dwelling place. Before the mountains were brought forth, or ever you had formed the earth and the world, even from everlasting to everlasting, you are God. Now, just think about that for a moment. Before God had ever formed the earth, before he had formed the world, brought forth the mountains, from everlasting to everlasting. You want to hurt your brain to spend a little bit of time on what does that mean? Eternity in the past, stretching behind. Eternity in the future, stretching ahead. From everlasting to everlasting. You turn man, verse 3, to destruction. And you say, return, O children of men. Now, I'm reading New King James here. That word destruction, it's a very interesting word because if you have maybe ESV or some other translation, it might translate it as dust, right? But it's not the normal word that's used for dust. It's not the word for dust used like in Genesis. It's a word that means to kind of grind to powder or crush, right? So it's not just the word for dust, but it's also the process of making something into dust. And he's saying, one day, Lord, by your hand, you're going to make me go back to dust. It's where I came from. It's where I'll return, right? Which is a bit of an interesting perspective. Do you see the juxtaposition here already? From everlasting to everlasting, and yet I'm headed back to dust. I'm headed back to dust. And then he continues. For 1,000 years in your sight are like yesterday when it is past, and like a watch in the night. Now, one of the things I've realized is that the older I get, the quicker time seems to pass. Have you noticed this? Now, my son Caleb and I have a very different view of an hour, or a day, or a week, or a year. And it kind of makes sense, right? For him, a year is 10% of his entire life. Right? So it stretches out huge. For me, it's a much smaller fraction. And then notice what Moses is saying about God. For 1,000 years in your sight, this is God's perspective on time. 1,000 years in your sight are like yesterday when it is past, and like a watch in the night. God experiences time way different than you and I, because his perspective is from everlasting to everlasting. And if your frame of mind is from everlasting to everlasting, what is 1,000 years? Well, it's like a watch in the night. It's like a couple hours. And by the way, those couple hours in the night, they pass even quicker than a normal couple of hours, right? It's just a moment. It's just a moment. Meaning that our lives, in God's perspective, are like a snap of the fingers. Which Moses is not reminding us of, because that means that we're insignificant to God. That's not the reason. That's not what he's trying to tell us. Because even there can be a moment in time There are things that have happened in your life that have taken mere seconds, that have mattered immensely, haven't they? Right? When I said I do to Jade, it didn't take that long. I mean, there was a whole lot of hubbub before and a little bit after, but, But that moment, just because it's short doesn't mean it was insignificant. So Moses, he's pointing out that we're this snap of the fingers. In the morning, talking about us, humanity, they're like grass which grows up. In the morning it flourishes and grows up. In the evening it's cut down and withers. And you know those days, right? When the rain is coming steadily in the summer and it seems like the grass needs to be mowed every single day. That's what Moses is talking about. It grows up and then it needs to be cut down. The days of our lives are 70 years, and if by reason of strength they are 80 years, yet their boast is only labor and sorrow, for it is soon cut off, and we fly away. The book of James would say that our lives are vapor, mist, and dust. So why is Moses saying this? Well, I think he's probably reflecting on his own life. I mean, he lived to 120, but maybe he was expecting 80, and, we don't know. But he's thinking about his life and realizing something that is so simple, yet often so ignored. Life is short. It's incredibly short. Incredibly short. 70, maybe 80 years. Maybe if you're 90, maybe you get to 90. A few get to 100. But even then, grass, vapor, dust. Life is very short. And there's something in your heart and something in my heart that doesn't want it to be. Right? Ecclesiastes, eternity is in our hearts. And sometimes, because the only thing we have known in our lives is having life, we can almost just assume that we will continue to have life, that it'll just go on. We've had 24 hours in every day of our lives. And that it'll just keep going on. We can take it for granted. And Moses is saying, maybe we need to think about it and have a little perspective. Time. We've all got it, but you can't store it up. You can't save it up. You've got to spend it every single day that it's given to you. And it's kind of like, Caleb, imagine that I gave you an allowance every single day, right? I gave you $24 every single day. Would you like this? But the rule was that you had to spend all 24 of those dollars every single day. You could never save a penny of it. Would that seem like a pretty good deal? Yeah. I mean, it would kind of change his whole perspective on money, wouldn't it? $24 that he gets to spend, but he has to spend every single day. And you give him a couple weeks, some months, a few years of this, the way that he looks at money is going to be entirely different than the way he looks at it now. But what if one day the money stops coming? Right? Sometimes because all we've ever known is those 24 hours put in our hand without us even asking every single day. And we get to spend them, we have to spend them whether we like it or not. Sometimes it's easy to assume that just because I had those 24 hours today, I will have them tomorrow. just this last April, my sister died. It's a reminder that those hours that I think will be there tomorrow may not be. They may not be. And the truth is, even if we live to 80 or 90, which is no guarantee at all, life is incredibly short. Because your heart desires, is made for, thinks about eternity and not just 70 or 80. So this is what Moses says in light of all of this. So teach us to number our days, that we may gain a heart of wisdom. God, you are from everlasting to everlasting. But we're like the watch in the night, just a few brief moments. So, therefore, because of all of this, God, will you teach me? And isn't that interesting that we have to be taught to number our days? If Caleb had received that $24 every single day of his life, wouldn't he need to be taught how to spend money kind of wisely? Right? Because it was just always there. And he would assume it would just continue to be so. Moses is saying, Moses, God, I need you to teach me how to number my days. Now, what does that mean? Could Moses number his days? Did he go up on Sinai and God said, okay, Moses, you've got 10,284 left. Tomorrow, 10,283. Is that what Moses learned? Did he get a number? Did he know a number? No. None of us do. None of us do. And isn't that what we need to be taught? Right? Because we don't have a number, don't take now for granted. Because now might not be there tomorrow. We can't spend the past, we can't spend the future, but now, this moment is the moment we have. Teach us to number our days, that we may gain a heart of wisdom. Don't spend your life as if you had an endless number of days to spend. Don't spend your hours and your minutes as if you had an infinite number of them to do whatever you wanted. You have a limited number. You may have 1 day left. You may have 10,000 days left. We don't know. But whatever that number is, it's not from everlasting to everlasting yet. If Elon Musk and I were to go shopping together, we would probably approach things a little bit differently, right? If we're going down to the car dealership, the questions that he is asking, the things that he's thinking about in his mind is completely different than what I am thinking about. Because from his perspective, what he has to spend is pretty much unlimited. And so, buy the car, right? He can't really go wrong because he always has the opportunity to buy another or another 1,000 or whatever it is. For me, because my resources are limited, I'm thinking about that decision completely different. And this is what Moses is saying. Do you realize that that my time is the resource, is the thing that God has put in our hands that we can never get back? The moments you spent yesterday will never return to you. You can spend money and more can come. You can lose your health and regain it. But the time you've spent, the time I've spent, is forever gone. Forever gone. We have a finite amount, Moses is saying. So how are we going to spend it? What do we spend it on? I talked about this there at that Eritrean gathering. How do we spend our life, right? And time management really is life management, because the currency of life is our time, right? That's the currency of our life. So we talked about all of this. Prayed, ate, I got in my car, left. Didn't think about it again. Until 4 days later, when Bemnet called me, said, hey, did you hear about Haptamariam? No. He had a heart attack and died. Had just retired and was thinking about all the things he was going to do, right? All the things he's been waiting to do, right? Like that. Man, I thought about that thing so much. So much. It could have been me, right? When I got in that car to head home, that could have been my last day. How do I spend it? How do I spend my life? Well, Moses has two things that he would suggest, that he would long for. Psalm 90. Oh, satisfy us early with your mercy, that we may rejoice and be glad all of our days. Don't you want to spend your life on something that is satisfying to you? Who wants to get to the end of their life and feel dissatisfied for how they've lived it, how they've spent it? But here's the thing. We live in a world that lies to us all the time about what will satisfy us. And even our own brains and our own bodies deceive us all the time about what will actually satisfy us. Right? I crave to spend my time on things that are ultimately dissatisfying. Don't we do it all the time? You've got this little pocket rectangle that you carry around with you. And your brain just tells you, oh, wouldn't it be so satisfying if you looked at and stared at this pocket rectangle for a while? Wouldn't that make you happy? Does it? When is the last time you put down your phone feeling deeply satisfied? Right? And isn't it ironic that we are so tempted, we are so attracted to spend our lives staring at rectangles that we carry around in our pockets or mount up on our walls, and we watch other people, most of the time fake, live out a fake life. And we think that somehow spending my life staring at a rectangle, watching somebody live out a fake life is going to satisfy me. It's a lie. But we buy into it all the time. So what does Moses have to say? Oh God, would you satisfy us early with your mercy? God, I don't want to wait till the end of my life to realize that you're the one, you're the thing that will satisfy me. Satisfy me early, satisfy me now so that I can live out my days satisfied by your mercy. Is God satisfying to you? Do you experience him in your present life as satisfying? And I would venture to say that if we can't say yes to that, it's because we're not actually experiencing God and who he is. Because who he is, Moses is telling us. David tells us in the Psalms, it's all over, that God is the fountain that quenches our thirst and satisfies our soul. We're longing for something eternal, and it's him. We're longing for something deep and loving and grounding, and it's him. It is him. And if we aren't finding him to be satisfying, I don't think we've found him yet. I don't actually think we've found him yet. Satisfy me early. Okay, maybe that's time of day, but I think it's also time of life. And there's a lie that is being told in our culture and in our minds over and over. Do the fun stuff first. And the spiritual stuff, right, can wait. And isn't every time we look to that rectangle for satisfaction, isn't that an act of spiritual procrastination? Right? Moses said, God, I got to find you satisfying first, so that I don't have to live out my days unsatisfied. So Rob, the iPad looks like it died. I don't know if we have my rectangle, right? They fail us all the time. Don't put your trust in rectangles. A number of months ago, we looked at Psalm 1. Blessed be the man, you remember? Blessed be the man, this life that's like a tree planted by the waters. And remember, the man who was blessed, the woman who was blessed, who is satisfied, who is experiencing the abundant, the nourished, the flourishing life, his delight is in the law of the Lord. Where do they find their satisfaction? Where do they find their joy? In the law of the Lord. And because they delight in the law of the Lord, it causes us to meditate day and night on God. Not because we have to, right? but because we want to. Because we're invited to. We're to be satisfied in God's mercy. And there's a rhythm, there's an intentionality, but there's also a slowness to this, right? This doesn't seem to be like a microwave sort of thing. And I think part of the problem, part of the reason that I don't find God satisfying enough, part of the reason that you don't find God satisfying enough is because I don't have unhurried time with Him. It's hard to delight in a relationship when your time is always rushed, when it's always hurried. If we give God space and time, if we give Him attention, I believe He will prove satisfactory. We will delight in Him. In Him. When we talked about Psalm 90, there's this contrast, right? The righteous are like the tree planted by the water, but the way of the wicked is said to be like chaff. You remember we talked about, what is chaff? Chaff is the thing that you have to get out of the way to get to what you really want, right? You don't want the chaff. You don't plow the field and plant the field and harvest the field because you're after chaff. You're after wheat. You're after the fruit, the crop. But you've got to get rid of the chaff in order to get what your heart really longs for and desires. And by the way, chaff, it's not nourishing. You could eat a belly full of it, and you're still not going to be nourished. And we fill ourselves with a lot of chaff. What comes out of these rectangles? I mean, there's some good stuff, right? Don't get me wrong. But it's a lot of chaff, isn't it? It's a lot of chaff. So let's go to verse 17. So he's prayed, God, satisfy us early. And let the beauty of the Lord our God be upon us. Isn't that a beautiful phrase? Let the beauty, He's beautiful. The beauty of the Lord our God be upon us. And establish the work of our hands for us. Yes, establish the work of our hands. Now, I want you to notice that verse 17 doesn't come first. Moses doesn't say, my life is short, teach me to count the number of my days, help me to do something that matters. Time is short. There's this pressure. I've got to use it to do something that's established, that lasts, that matters. That's not what comes first, right? The first thing is, God, let me be satisfied in your mercy, right? Let your beauty be upon me. The motivation, the desire isn't, your life is short, so you better make it count. It better be productive. You've got this pressure, this weight upon you. You got to make a difference. That's not what comes first. What comes first is, I can spend my life enjoying God and His beauty and His mercy and His loving kindness and finding satisfaction in Him. And because I'm satisfied in Him, I want to do something that matters, that actually would last and make a difference. I don't know where Moses was when he prayed this prayer. I wonder if it's those years in the wilderness, right? Maybe he knows that his Pisgah is about to come. I don't know. But he longs that his life would be spent enjoying God And that by God's grace and his beauty and his kindness, then out of a life that is enjoying God, he would be able to spend his life in a way that makes a difference, that lasts. That's not just going to be swept away like chaff. So in the very last part of our time together this morning, I want to make a transition from the Old Testament here in Psalm 90 very quickly. I just want to look at a snippet in Ephesians chapter 5 together, okay? And I think that when Paul is talking about wisdom here in Ephesians 5, I think the words of Moses, "Teach me to number my days that I may gain a heart of wisdom," are echoing in his mind. Ephesians chapter 5, let me just set the context a little bit here. Paul says, for you were once darkness, but now you are light in the world. Walk as children of light. For years, I didn't actually take enough time to pay attention to this verse. And when I read it, when Paul said, for you were once darkness, but now you are light in the world, light in the Lord, I always read it as, I was once in darkness, but now I am in light. And this week I had a Bible and a journal and trying to slow down a little bit. And I was like, wait a minute. It doesn't say we were in darkness. It said we were darkness. It doesn't say we're in light. It says we are light. Just think about that. You were darkness. I was darkness. And have now, but now. See the pivot? But now you are light. Okay, so that's the background. That's the framing. Here's the application. You were darkness, now you are light. Walk as children of light. What does that mean? See then that you walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise. Remember we talked about this in Psalm 90. But as wise, redeeming the time, because the days are evil. So we can spend our time foolishly or wisely, carefully or haphazardly. We can spend our lives and in fact, that's what the word means there, redeeming. The word is economic. It's the picture of somebody going to a market and looking for a bargain, right? This is not an Elon Musk who doesn't care what the price tag is, who can afford to buy whatever he wants, whenever he wants. This is somebody who's on a budget, who's looking for the best use of their dollars for what they need. Buying back, literally, the time. We're on a budget, guys. We're on a budget. How are you going to budget your time? How are you going to spend your life? Because you know what? I'm going to preach to myself for here just a second. Read. You cannot spend your life on everything. You cannot do everything. You're going to run out of money. You're going to run out of life. If everything is your priority, nothing is your priority. So we get to choose how we will spend our lives. And Paul is saying, use the time redemptively. Because the days are evil. Now just think about this. Remember what he says? You were what? You were darkness, but now you are light. How should light spend its time? If it's in the middle of the night, what should the light do? What should its priority be? How should it spend itself? To illuminate, to shine, to brighten. Our world is dark. You know it. You know it. But the temptation is, the world is dark, so let me escape it. It's stressful. It causes anxiety. It's difficult. Those people are crazy. Let me find a little rectangle or something that will be my portal out of this world, that will allow me to step outside of it and escape it so I don't have to deal with it. But Paul is saying if all the lights try to escape, if they're hiding themselves, if they're escaping out of the world will be left in darkness. Darkness thrives from a careless use of light. From light that is okay being hidden and escaping. We don't realize how our time can make a difference in this world. We do not realize how the Lord working in us can transform darkness in our corner of the world and make it brighter if we would allow him to redeem our time. I want to just look at Jesus as we close. The light of the world. Look what he says. I must work the works of him who sent me while it's day. The night is coming when no one can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. He said this. He's about to give sight to a blind person. Notice the urgency there, right? The world's in darkness. I am its light. Let's do the work that God has given the sun while we can. Because there will be a day when it won't be an option. When it won't be an option. Is that true of us? Yeah, absolutely it is. One day you're going to run out of opportunities to be light in this world. And you will have spent your last opportunity to be light. Now, that's a lot of pressure. How do you handle that? I think it's really interesting. Jesus not only feels the urgency, the need for him to be light in the darkness, but he also feels the urgency and the need to take time and slow down. So he himself often withdrew into the wilderness and prayed. How much? Often. But the world needs light. He's got a limited number of days. Doesn't that mean he has to be doing good for others all the time? No. He's going to spend time being satisfied in God, right? In delighting in God's mercies, in reconnecting and recharging and allowing God to deepen his work and his calling. So notice, though, Jesus' escape is not a little rectangle that will make him more anxious and less connected with himself and less connected with God. His escape is not a way to avoid the calling and the responsibility. It's not a way to detach from the stress. It's a way to experience all of those burdens and take them to God and allow God to strengthen him to be satisfied in God. We can't work all the time. I'm preaching to myself now. We can't carry burdens all the time. But the little rectangles, they don't help us. They don't actually restore us. They don't actually give us rest. They don't actually better equip us and better connect us. God does. God does. So we got to be light in the world. But we also have to spend time in the wilderness. Work and rest, allowing God to work in us. I'll close with this. Moses prayed that God would let him establish the work of his hands. How does Jesus spend his life? Somebody who has the whole perspective of eternity from everlasting to everlasting. How does somebody with that perspective spend a finite amount of human life? For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. He spent his life with eternity in view. Helping others to be there with him in eternity. So how are we going to be stewards of right now? We can't be stewards of tomorrow, and we can't be stewards of yesterday. We're stewards of today, this moment. This is the time. Always. May we find what we long for, what we look for, what we seek in God. And then may he use us to help others find the same.